Hello and welcome into this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. In this week's edition, we will talk about the PGA Tour and the PIF's framework agreement, which was made public on Monday night. Keegan Bradley, and an increasingly muddy Ryder Cup picture, at least on the U.S. side. And of course, what's on the grill for the July 4th holiday. But first, Rex, you obtained the framework agreement for the PGA Tour and the Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which was turned over to lawmakers on Monday night, ahead of the July 11th review by U.S. Senate subcommittee. Real quick, what do we need to know here?
Real quick, I'm going to say this, and this probably doesn't bode well for me. I thought we had some sort of agreement that anything after 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, that we could just go on with our lives. I thought, by and large, this story had sort of held to that time frame. Anything between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. was fair game. You had to be on your game. You had to be ready for anything. But when you get a text at 9:30 at night, that's the time when we crawl into our bottles and we want the day to go away.
Fast asleep by that point. Fast asleep. I was in bed by 8:30.
Yeah, it was not fast asleep. So it was a little surprising to get the text last night. Essentially what this is, as you pointed out, that it's a permanent subcommittee on investigations, and they want answers. They want to know more about this agreement. So that agreement was sent over, and I obtained it. And I guess it's vague on purpose. This goes back to what we said when it was announced, I think, on June 6th, that had they shown up, had the PGA Tour, had Jimmy Dunn and Jay Monahan showed up with a fully cooked plan, I think it would have been so much worse as far as from the membership. They would have been so much more angry, and I don't know if that's even possible. But at least now we know, like, for example, we're taping this podcast on Tuesday, and there will be a policy board meeting tonight, and it'll be the first policy board meeting since this was unveiled. And from my understanding, they're not going to vote on anything tonight. That the framework agreement has already been approved. Now they start getting into the details. They start working towards the definitive agreement. What we got last night, again, 5 pages, very vague. I think we've covered most of the important bullet points. One, there's a path back for those players who join Live Golf to the PGA Tour and DP World Tour. Not sure what that looks like, but you do create that. An end to the litigation, and we saw that last week with prejudice, which means it can never come back. And 3, they're going to take all the for-profit assets for the Tour, DP World Tour, Live Golf, put them into a bucket, make an assessment, and that's what NewCo is going to be. And I'm never going to stop calling that. I'm sure eventually they come up with some sort of.
It's like Project Wedge, remember?
Yeah. Isn't it great? Like, I love the idea of just from now to the end of time, it's just going to be NewCo. No. We've got this great name for it. Nope. NewCo. You guys did it. It was a capital N, capital
New
C, all one word.
Company.
Squished together. Yep. All squished together. Hey, you notice that? I hit my mic and it didn't go away.
Well done. It's like the old Golf Channel logo. They took the Golf Channel and the PGA Tour and smashed them together.
Squished it together. And so that will be whatever NewCo becomes. I guess I have to go to a couple of things that stood out to me in the agreement, and I'm still kind of trying to digest it. And our lawyer, Jody Balsam, she's probably going to come up with many better things than what I'm going to come up with. One, there was a stipulation in there that all parties involved, that includes DP World Tour and PGA Tour, have to assist, quote unquote, assist Live Golf in its effort to try to get world ranking points. That stands out to me. And it almost seemed like a throwaway line. It was page 4.5 of a 5-page document. But
it was like the second half of a clause of a long sentence at the end of a paragraph. Like that's exactly it's like a throwaway line.
Yeah, I had to go back in a second time because I hadn't seen it. I guess, and look, maybe this is completely incorrect, and we're kind of just operating on what we know and what we don't know. And one of the things we don't know is what happens to Live Golf. According to Greg Norman, that it's full steam ahead. It's business as usual. They're going to play out this season. They're about to announce next season schedule. I can tell you internally, talking with people at Live Golf, both players and officials, that there's a real fear. Like, what becomes of us when NewCo is created? Because it's hard to imagine a world where both things exist, where they come up with NewCo and whatever that is, it fits into the PGA Tour schedule, fits into sort of that ecosystem, and then Live Golf is going to exist separately from that. That, to me, in my mind, suggests, though, if they want world ranking points, that it isn't a short-term play, that the PIF and the governor is taking sort of the long view on that one. So that one stood out to me. The other one that stood out.
Don't you think, Rexy, just to put a fine point on that with the world ranking, this is just a framework agreement. The details are going to be hammered out over the next 6 to 12 months. It's still going to be potentially subject to review by the Department of Justice and or other entities. Don't you think that this is merely a way for the PGA Tour, DP World Tour, Live to come together to try to secure Live's application for the OWG? Or don't you think it's just a way to appease some of those players, keep them competitively relevant for the time being until this could potentially be done? Live submitted its application almost a year ago, right? It was right around the Open Championship when they submitted the review. These things tend to take anywhere between 12 to 16 months. If history is any indication, we should be getting some clarity soon on that front. If they can get world ranking points, it doesn't seem like they're going to get them retroactively, but if they get world ranking points moving forward, that could help players at least gain something, get back inside the top 100. Maybe if they go on an absolute tear, get them back inside the top 60 or top 50 and make them eligible for the major championships in 2024. I don't necessarily think that line is an indication that this is like a long-term play and keeping Live viable for the future. I think it actually might just be a short-term solution, a 6 to 12 month solution to make sure that these players remain competitively relevant and potentially open to the major championships, especially if there could be a path back in 2024.
Well, that's where I think your plan runs into an issue. So there is a path back. I mean, that's written into the agreement. So there will be some sort of path back, whatever that looks like, beginning next year. So the only stipulation was at the end of 2023. So in theory, you could come up with a scenario that those players would start next year on January 1 as PGA Tour members again, or DP World Tour members. So I don't.
Well, there's still going to be some sort of penalty.
Yes, and that's the bigger question. I mean, that was one of the other things that we've already sort of addressed. I don't know how in this fractured universe that seems to be becoming more and more fractured by the day, because you're starting to get sort of these separations, at least among players, at least among the rank and file, that they don't want to see X player come back. And I'm tired of naming them because I don't want to get called out again on social media. They're okay if Y player comes back, a player like, I don't know, let's call him DJ player. But they don't like if X player comes back, let's call him Phil Mickelson. I think that's where the issue's going to end up being here, because you're going to have to take this a la carte. My understanding is it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and that is it comes with its own set of problems. So I'm not quite sure. I see what you're saying, but in theory, if those players could start next year anew, then I don't know why they would need to have that short-term gap, because it's clear that Live Golf events aren't going to get points this year. Like they're not just going to happen overnight. I mean, I don't think that's it.
Why not? Why can't they get them? I think this is the halfway point of a Live season. If this decision can get approved,
I think it was 18 months that they essentially said. That's sort of the average. If you go back to the last tour that got them, its tour in Mexico, it took 18 months. So that's what they keep leaning into.
Yeah,
and
like
you don't really get, you don't get to 18 months until after the Live Golf season is over. I guess anything is possible now that you have all the players in play. I will say that it is interesting that the parties involved is the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour. Jay Monahan and Keith Pelley with the DP World Tour have already recused themselves from this. And so, at least on paper, they're not even part of this discussion. So again, it seemed like a throwaway line. I'm not quite 100% sure what it means. The other one was, if you went down even a little bit further, it talks about sponsorship and the PIF. And my understanding is at specific events, I don't think we're going to end up with the PIF or Aramco sponsoring a PGA Tour event. I think that applies more to DP World. I think we'll end up with maybe 2 or 3 events, whether they're Aramco or PIF, like we've seen in the past. But other than that, I think it's pretty much what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, which I think is probably a relief to golf fans who, I mean, just like golf media, were caught by surprise by the landmark agreement. But there wasn't any like smoking gun in this. It wasn't something that Jimmy Dunn was declining to admit publicly in some of the front-facing interviews that he did in the days afterward. Like, Yasir is going to be a member of the PGA Tour Policy Board. We know that. Jay Monahan's going to have to do an empirical review of Live Golf, and he'll have final say over that. It is true that the PGA Tour is retaining control of NewCo. At least that's what it appears to be. I did think 2 things were interesting, Rex. One is that the agreement was signed on May 30th, which gave the Tour and the PIF about a week before they went on CNBC and kind of dropped this bombshell. That is a long time.
Tuesday, Memorial Week. That's the first thing that stood out to me. I'm like, huh. Like, so on Tuesday of Memorial Week, they had this. They could have announced it then. They would have never done it. But Jay Monahan was at Muirfield Village that day and the next day. So you get an idea of how things were moving along.
But by all accounts, they bungled the public messaging of this, and they had a week to prepare a comm strategy. That certainly wasn't the best move. I still think the biggest open question, I think that's just because we cover professional golf, is what actually happens to Live Golf. And so this new right, is going to be taking what they're calling like a full and objective empirical evaluation of Live, with Monahan having the final say. You can probably guess which way he would potentially lean in that. You just don't know. Greg Norman, like any CEO, is reassuring his employees, reassuring the players that they're going to have a season. Maybe they're going to unveil a schedule. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come to fruition. But does Live Golf continue in 2024? Have a full season? Do they continue to go their separate ways? Is the team model going to be incorporated into the PGA Tour? And if so, how would it be? Strictly a fall schedule? Would it be kind of sprinkled throughout the regular season, kind of what they do with the Aramco Series on the Ladies European Tour? I think that's probably the most realistic. I've heard, the theory that, let's just have this fun kind of giveaway in the fall, right? That's not what the best players in the world are asking for. They're asking for this dedicated offseason, which they're finally going to get. They're finally going to get that in 2023, where after the Ryder Cup, they can shut it down for 3 months if they're so doing. But instead, you're going to have kind of these big designated events, the PGA Tour schedule. You're going to have the major championships. You're going to have the FedEx Cup playoffs. You're going to have a team event at the President's Cup. And then you're going to have this team concept in the fall. It seems highly unlikely that would be the solution. So that was one takeaway for me, Rex. The second is this is exactly what we thought, where there's very few details that have actually been hammered out, right, in this framework agreement. This is literally just that, a framework agreement. That, I think, gives the players a lot of power and potential sway to implement the changes for what the future of the PGA Tour could look like. If this was, fully baked, as you said, their hands are tied. The fact that there is so much wiggle room here, not just with the path back, but what the PGA Tour schedule could look like, I think should be actually enticing for the PGA Tour Policy Board and the rest of the membership.
It is an interesting point, because I think what you'll end up with is players who want to draw a line. We saw this with John Rahm last year. Like, remember at Eastlake when he was told, okay, you have to play 20 events next year, and these are the 20 events. Like, they hate that. Like, they absolutely, like, more than 4 putts. I mean, they absolutely hate being told, okay, 20 events, and these are those 20 events. Like, that's not what they want to deal with at all. So they're going to have to come up with a tipping point. And you're right. Does Live Golf in its current form continue to exist sort of outside the ecosystem, and then you sort of pick and choose which events you want to bring in? And I can imagine a world where the Zurich Classic, for example, it's already a team event. Why wouldn't you just incorporate that as part of whatever NewCo's going to be? There's some events on the DP World Tour that you could probably bring into the fold. But again, all you're doing now is adding. And I don't think the players, at least the top players, have any interest in adding at this point. You've already got X number of designated events. You've got major championships. You've got FedEx Cup playoffs. You've got Ryder Cup / President's Cup. And then if you're a member of the DP World Tour, you've got some obligations over there. They're going to have to find a way to sort of walk this line, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I don't think the fall is necessarily going to be the answer for that. Here's one thing, Rex, that I posited on Monday's Scramble.
You've got to see a doctor. You've got to see a doctor about whatever that is.
A lot of yellow phlegm still, not going to lie. After 2 months, you would have thought they had disappeared.
I'm
Here's something I posited, Rex.
I'm eating my oatmeal, just so you know. Just so you guys can go ahead and call me out. That's fine. We have a very, very busy morning involved. We've got a very important meeting come up. I have to do golf today. We needed to knock this out. We needed to knock some other stuff out. Don't lecture me about eating my oatmeal. Go.
This is 8:30. I ate breakfast 2.5 hours ago. Get with the program. Trying to attack the day, as I say, the University of Georgia football program. Here's something, Rex, I posited on golfchannel.com in my Monday Scramble that I want to get your take, because there is a third member of this framework agreement that seems to be forgotten. We talk about a lot what this is going to mean for the PGA Tour and its future. We talk a lot about what this is going to mean for the PIF, which is the financial backer of Live Golf. But the DP World Tour is kind of the forgotten member of this agreement. And I actually think that there is a window of opportunity to do something that is very cool. And so I went through kind of the PGA Tour schedule, and there's clearly a familiar cadence, right? That is familiar to golf fans, and it's something that we've grown accustomed to over the past couple of decades. You have, the West Coast swing on what I think is inarguably the best courses that they'd see all season on the PGA Tour. Then you have to run up to the Masters on the Florida swing. And then the schedule tails off a little bit. There's really only one signature event between the Masters and the PGA Championship. That's the one at Quail Hollow. You have two cool venues between the PGA and the U.S. Open. That is Muirfield Village and Colonial. But we're kind of in, I would call it like the dead zone in the PGA Tour schedule, where the events are kind of unmemorable. They're not played on particularly great golf courses. The fields are a little bit hit or miss. This week's Rocket Mortgage has actually a decent field, I think, because of some player commitments or players like Justin Thomas who are trying to earn points and solidify their FedEx Cup standing. But I think there's a window of opportunity, Rex, to more closely align with the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. And here is what my potential solution is. I want to see a month of co-sanctioned golf across the pond. I want to see a stretch of golf that includes the British Masters, the Irish Open, the Scottish Open, and it culminates with the Open Championship. It is not realistic to expect that the best players in the world are going to spend a month over abroad. Like, that's just not going to happen, particularly after the busy spring and early summer they had, particularly not with the FedEx Cup playoffs upcoming. But if they can pick and choose one or two of those stops and spend 2 or 3 weeks overseas on great golf courses with huge purses, I think that would be a massive jolt to the PGA Tour schedule. And you can still have both, right? You can still have a 3M Open. You can still have a Rocket Mortgage. You can still have a John Deere, but it's just going to draw a different caliber of player than you could potentially have these co-sanctioned events abroad. Tell me why I'm a genius, and don't tell me that I'm an idiot.
No, I don't think you're an idiot. I will say it's unrealistic. Having done kind of a similar stretch last year that you're talking about. So I did the Irish Open. I was a central reporter at the Irish, the Scottish, and then went on to the Open Championship and covered it there. I can tell you I enjoyed that. Certainly Bunkmate enjoyed being over there for a month on someone else's dime. I'm going to say that players don't like it very much. Specifically, take Rory McIlroy, for example. He has a lot of pressure to play the Irish Open, which is understandable. But you don't want to play 2 weeks leading into a major championship, especially a major that's going to mean the world to him this year, going back to rural Liverpool. And I can tell you that the folks at Horizon who sponsor the Irish Open didn't like particularly being lost in sort of that flurry of really, really good events. I like where your mind's at, and I think you probably could. I think
it would just give an identity to this part of the season. Like right now, this is just like survival season. Instead, it could be coffee golf season, links golf season.
Well, and I think we're going to end up with, my guess is, I think we see the schedule, the PGA Tour schedule for next year this week. I've heard rumors it was going to come out last week, but it looks like it's probably going to be aimed more towards this week. And based on sort of what we've seen, what I've seen, I think you're going to end up with a scenario where you would have Memorial, U.S. Open, Travelers Championship, and then you would sort of have that dead couple of weeks. I think it's 3 weeks between the Travelers Championship and the time we end up that golf ends up at the Open Championship. So you could do something there. Not like right now you have the Scottish and the Open. I don't know if top players are going to play. So then that would be 3 weeks, and then that would be 6, and that's 7. You're talking about them playing 5 out of 7 weeks. It's just not going to happen. And this goes back to my other comment. We can come up with a lot of creative ways to fit whatever NewCo is going to be into the current PGA Tour schedule and DP World. To your point, I think some of it's kind of stupid, but to your point, I like the idea that DP World is going to be the one that's on the outside looking in. It is telling that Keith Pelley, the CEO of the DP World Tour, does not have a seat as of right now on that NewCo board. And so you get an idea of where the power flux is going to end up. And I think if you talk to people internally in Europe, there is a concern that you could already make an argument it's a secondary circuit. Does it become sort of the third best circuit at that point behind PGA Tour and then whatever NewCo is and then the DP World Tour? That's not a great scenario.
God, the Korn Ferry Tour is catching up quickly too. If you look at the caliber of players who are winning and are soon to be promoted to the PGA
Westwood,
Tour.
Check the timestamp on that. Korn Ferry Tour catching up with the European Tour.
I think it's inarguable at this point. It's just frustrating because we've been sold this reimagined PGA Tour schedule, and it is going to be different if there's a cadence between a designated event, 3 non-designated events, a designated event, and kind of that. But the actual feel of the PGA Tour season is not going to be all that different. Like there was a golden opportunity to bring in like an Abu Dhabi or Dubai at the beginning of the year. There's a golden opportunity to bring in the BMW PGA at some point during the late summer or early fall. There was an opportunity to make not just the Scottish a co-sanctioned event, but the Irish, the Italian, the French, the British Masters, all of these great tournaments with storied history on the DP World Tour, and bring them into the PGA Tour fold, boost those purses, get significant players to come abroad and spend 2 or 3 weeks heading into the year's final major. It's just frustrating. I'm not saying it's not going to ever happen because that's just the optimist in me speaking, that essentially we can have a reimagined PGA Tour, but it certainly does not sound like that's going to be the case in 2024. Rex, Keegan Bradley was the winner at the Travelers Championship. Potentially not the most dramatic fun round that we've seen on the PGA Tour schedule. At one point, he was leading by 6 shots. Patrick Cantlay actually had an opportunity, a good opportunity to cut into that deficit even more, trim the deficit to 2 shots, potentially even 1. Instead, he bogeyed 2 of his last 3 holes. But even if it wasn't necessarily dramatic for viewers, I think it was hugely significant for Keegan Bradley, shouting out the winners and all of the golfers from the Northeast all over the world. What do you make of this now, Rex? Keegan Bradley, 2-time winner this season, up to number 7, the U.S. Ryder Cup standings, back inside the top 20 in the world rankings. What do you make of Keegan's resurgence? Is it here to stay? And what does it mean in particularly for the American Ryder Cup team?
For those of us that like to do the storytelling thing, and this is like right up your alley, I can see you doing some sort of tearful feature next year going into, I don't know, the PGA Championship or something with Keegan and this entire family. I will say that from a storytelling point of view, this is pretty good, because this is a guy who's gone through not 1 but 2 reclamation projects. Go back to when the USGA and the RNA banned anchoring, and he had to figure out another way. And he was one of the guys, I think a lot of us, and I'll throw myself under that bus, thought, yep, he's not going to make it in the new world. He needed anchoring. He was sort of the example. He was Exhibit A when the USGA and the RNA decided that they didn't say it out loud. It was the quiet thing that no one said out loud, that they did not like the visual of him winning that PGA Championship. I think Ernie Els winning the Open. I think he was also anchoring at the time. Didn't help, but he found a way. And like we saw it this weekend, I thought our colleague Andrew Bradley, he's the field producer who was up there, and he sent this great picture out on Twitter over the weekend of what Keegan does every morning. And it's the aim point thing, but he takes it a step farther. Every morning on the putting green, he will actually assign the number of what he thinks the slope will be all the way around. And it forces him to sort of recalibrate every single day. I thought it was really cool because it shows a level of commitment to a part of his game that wasn't very good, that he was determined, like, I'm not going to let this be a liability anymore. Like, I'm going to become a good putter again. So he did that. And then he sort of had to rebuild himself after another slump when it looked like his career was probably over, that he rebuilt his swing. He rebuilt his body. He's healthy now. And you pointed out, like, he's on this year's Ryder Cup team. He is a top 10 player. We talked about this last week. He's in that sort of magical top 50 now, that it looks like into the foreseeable future, he's going to be a force again.
It is interesting because, like, if you look at his strokes gained putting stats before the anchor ban came down, and then post 2016 when the anchor ban was enforced, like, it was a stark difference. And he has rebuilt himself, not just into a good putter. He's a top 25 putter on the PGA Tour. He's always been an incredible driver of the golf ball, one of the best drivers of the golf ball on the entire PGA Tour. And now you supplement that with above average, if not elite putting. And it certainly seems like his game is here to stay, even at age 37. I do think it speaks, Rex, to his doggedness, to his determination, to his grit, to his unwillingness to kind of be put in this box. And I go back to something that he said on Sunday night, where, you know, I'm a Northeast kid. I grew up in the Finger Lakes area in New York. He said, quote, "This is for all the kids like me that grew up in winters and can't play, and we get to watch kids from Florida and down south get better and compete and get invited to the biggest tournaments in the country that I was never invited to. And I hope they know that they can come from this area. They can come from this area and still make it in golf. I was never going to make it in golf."
Take a breath. Take a breath.
I cleared it.
Get a drink of water. You sure? You good? All
Yep.
right.
I cleared it. I was never going to make it in golf. I was a low to mid 70s shooter. Like, I could have played for D3 school, but you still kind of felt that as a Northeasterner, where your season basically ended on Halloween and you pick it up again on April Fool's Day, and you'd watch everyone else get better, and there was just no way that you knew that you were going to be able to shoot those scores. And so for Keegan Bradley to come from that area, which is somewhat unique, for him to go to St. John's, which is obviously not a golf powerhouse, and develop into this top 20 player in the world who's now playing with Michael Jordan at the Grove and getting texts from Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, I think is a very cool story. When you look big picture now at the U.S. Ryder Cup team, well, you can't help but think back to the President's Cup last September, Rex. Like, you looked at that American squad. Davis Love III called it one of the best that's ever been assembled. We kind of always thought that there'd be 2 spots available moving forward. Like, you thought Billy Horschel and Kevin Kisner would cycle off of that squad. I think you're going to have a lot more turnover than that. Brooks Koepka, even while switching allegiances in the tours that he's playing on, has put himself on that team. Wyndham Clark, the U.S. Open champion, has put himself on that team. And now Keegan Bradley, who's up to 7, that's one outside the automatic spots. Although he's not guaranteed to be on that squad, he would be hard for Zach Johnson to overlook now as a 2-time winner this season and a player who, albeit a decade ago, does have some Ryder Cup pedigree. And so I know we're talking about this on Golf Today as well. Who's a player that you have your eye on who's outside that top 6 who you think needs to kick it in gear here over the next 2 months?
I mean, I see where you're coming from with this, but if you kind of go from 7 to 12, right? And if you're Zach Johnson, that's sort of the number you're probably fixated on at the moment. 7, as you pointed out, is Keegan Bradley. 8 is your boy Jordan Spieth. 9 is Cam Young. 10, Sam Burns. 11, Justin Thomas. And 12, Colin Morikawa. I think if he went straight chalk right now, no one's going to throw their arms up and be like, "Oh, you got it completely wrong."
There's
I think
no Ricky. There's no Finau. There's
Ricky's
no DJ.
the one that's going to stand out. Yeah, and I mean, DJ actually slipped to 33 this week, so I'm not quite sure. No DJ, I don't think we're going to hear that. I mean, I think Brooks is pretty much a lock. No, he has dropped to 3rd, but you would imagine he's going to stay inside that top 6. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what DJ does at the Open Championship, and that is his last and only chance to do anything. If you look at that top 12, it's pretty hard to be like, all right, so maybe Wyndham Clark is not someone you would expect on that list. But at 2nd, that's not going to be a conversation that Zach's even probably going to be able to have. At that point, Wyndham Clark earned his way onto the team. Max Homa at 6. I think if
Max Homa's on that team.
I would think so too. So like, I don't see anyone. Cam Young concerns me because I don't think he's particularly playing very good golf at the moment. But again, he was on that team last year at Quail Hollow. I think he's sort of part of what they want to create going forward. He's not my favorite player to watch because I've never seen anyone so miserable on a golf course in my entire life. But I don't see him not getting a pick, especially at 9 on the list. Ricky Fowler stands out. Tony Finau, you're right, but it's hard to justify it. As well as Ricky has played, who are you going to get rid of? Morikawa? That's a tough one, man.
I know. So Cam Young is kind of the player that I've circled. He does not have a finish inside the top 30 since the Masters. Marco Simone is obviously kind of an unknown golf course. It's supposed to be big, but it's also supposed to be at least somewhat narrow in spots with some Pinot rough. The way that Cam Young is hitting the golf ball right now, he would probably be, despite being 9th on that list, I think he's a player that Zach Johnson could potentially be looking outside the top 12 to kind of field that roster. He's a player that certainly needs to be playing better as the group gets finalized here. I'd be looking at Colin Morikawa. Although he went 3-0-1 at the Ryder Cup in 2021, has not played his best golf of late too. I think the bigger point, Rex, is that with the resurgence of Brooks Koepka, with the improved play of Keegan Bradley, with the kind of breakout year from Wyndham Clark, we're looking at least 1, if not 2, high-profile names being left home. Whether it is a Cam Young, a Sam Burns, a JT, a Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, a Ricky Fowler, Dustin Johnson. Like, you can't bring them all. You can't have a team that's 14 deep. It's obviously a great problem to have, except if you're Zach Johnson, because then you're going to have to justify, if the team does lose across the pond, there's going to be a lot of second guessing of who you potentially overlooked. But there could be some hard feelings. I think JT was a player to keep an eye on. He had a much improved week at the Travelers Championship, finished inside the top 10, shot a 62 on Saturday. Very curious to see if he can keep it going over the next couple of weeks as well. Sausage finger, please.
Well, I was going to send you a text on Sunday afternoon for both of us to take a bit of a victory lap, because I believe last week in our Golf Today hit, we each had to pick a player who was kind of on the bubble. I believe you went with JT. Very well done. Pat on the back. I went with Adam Scott. Both of them were on the leaderboard on Sunday morning. So I felt like that we did pretty well. You want to run it back, or you have no interest in doing that?
We can run it back. I don't have the technology to do so, but you are exactly right. Those are the two players that we picked. We'll be picking said players again for this week's Golf Today hit. I mean,
Jack Johnson or Luke Donald at this point, though. I see the point you're trying to make here, but who would you rather be right now?
I mean, if you're Zach Johnson, you have an embarrassment of riches, right? Like you have to make very difficult phone calls. If you're Luke Donald, I think you're kind of hitting and hoping at this point, right? Like if you look at this European team, and like the actual core of the team is very, very solid. We're talking John Rahm, Roy McIlroy, Victor Hovland, Terrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, Justin Rose. Like I think you can almost guarantee that those guys are going to be there. And then you're getting a little bit dodgy. Then you have to have guys who are in form, who are going to be stepping up in the biggest week of their life, whether it's a Yannick Paul, who is currently on the team, automatically qualified, an Adrian Moronk, who is an absolute mammoth man, but he's going to be stepping into an arena that he's never seen before, a Sepp Straka, a Seamus Power, your boy Victor Perez. Alex Noren has some Ryder Cup pedigree, but boy, it's been a minute. The Hogard twins, are they able to go their separate ways? You have to package them together? Yeah, if you're Luke Donald, you're kind of hitting and hoping to round out that 12-man roster where Zach Johnson doesn't really have that issue.
Note Lee Westwood, 31-24. If you're Luke Donald, hitting and hoping.
I mean, you are hitting and hoping at the bottom of that roster. You need guys who are playing well, who either have some sort of course history there, or are kind of ready-made partnerships when you think of like the Hogard twins.
Which one of those picks didn't Stella like? I tried to pick up on it. I don't know if it was Victor Perez or one of the Hogard twins that Stella just did not like. Then
she wants to see she wants to see a little bit more out of the Hogard twins before you can justify it.
By the way, yeah, I really believe Moronk will be on that team.
Right, and so you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so you basically have to pick 2 or 3 guys. So if it's a Bobby Mack who catches fire, it's if it's Sepp Straka who plays well during the FedEx Cup playoffs, if it's a Seamus Power who needs to kind of pick up his form back from what we saw in the fall. Maybe it's an Alex Noren. I would kind of lean towards Noren personally.
He has experience.
A ball striking machine, and does have some experience. So it will be curious to see. There is, again, 2 months to go, and so much can change in 2 months' time. Rex, we do have a holiday coming up. It's the July 4th holiday. Strangely enough, it's going to be on a Tuesday this year. Not a huge fan of that. What are you cooking on the grill? Before I get into mine, what are you doing?
We're going to be out of town. We're going to be in Savannah visiting some friends up on the beach, so I won't be cooking anything on the grill. If you're watching someone else cook, I am going to. You'll enjoy this. So my son I had not done a proper breakfast on the Blackstone yet. My son wanted me to do that this morning, and it got postponed till tonight. So we're going to do
on a Tuesday. He just wanted a big breakfast on a Tuesday.
He just wanted a random big breakfast on a Tuesday, and I was going to do that, and my wife pushed it till tonight so the entire family can come over and enjoy it. So I'm fine with that. I am going to say this. It's best that it got pushed because I would not have had time. I've been sprinting around doing things this morning, so it worked out for the best. I will tell you this, that I did barbecue chicken thighs last night on the pit barrel, and I have to admit it's become one of my favorite things because, 1, it's relatively easy, and 2, they are delicious.
Oh, there's nothing better, folks. If you're still cooking chicken breasts, just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Like, they are absolutely flavorless unless you're pumping that thing and literally injecting it with butter. It is just not going to be delicious. You have to absolutely perfect the doneness, probably by pulling it off at 158. Like, they're just not good. Chicken thighs are flavorful. You can give them any sort of flavor profile. They can get a delicious char on them. Like, there's a lot to like with barbecue chicken thighs. It is the easiest thing to do. Enjoy those 4 burners on the Blackstone. You'll be lucky that you had them, and fortunate that you had them. Bunk, shout out for spending $100 extra when you did not need to for that Blackstone. For me, Rex, this is kind of what I want to get into here with this conversation.
Oh boy.
July 4th is not my favorite grilling holiday. I
Too
know
hot?
it's like widely accepted that this is a backyard cookout. Everyone comes over. It's a great time. It's going to be 98 degrees
You're going to be at
on
Reynolds, right?
Tuesday.
You're up in
Yes.
Georgia, right?
Yes.
Well,
It's going to be 98 degrees there. I don't want to be sitting over a Weber kettle that's already going to be 500 degrees. You're sweating. You're getting sunburned. If you're wearing a tank top to work out your farmer's tan, like it's just to me, it's not a great holiday. I would actually put Labor Day as a better cookout holiday than July 4th. I would almost put, even though I haven't been able to enjoy Memorial Day in many moons because it conflicts with the men's NCAA championship. Like I would put Labor Day kind of on par with July 4th. Everyone knows that Thanksgiving is a barbecue pitmaster Super Bowl, right? Like that is
Right.
that is
No,
the
no,
established
let's do
number one
this.
day.
All right, I'm good with this. Let's do your top 5 holidays. Go from 5 to 1. Ready? Go ahead.
Okay. I would do Thanksgiving number 1.
Well, I said 5 to 1, but very good. I'm glad we figured that out.
No,
Yeah.
that's too hard. We're gonna do 2. I'm gonna go with Christmas Eve. I actually like Christmas Eve better than Christmas. The reason why I do is we tend to have beef tenderloin at the house. You can smoke it, reverse sear it at the end. It's delicious. We have an au jus. We have mashed potatoes. It is wonderful to do, and plus you have the anticipation. You're about to have the climax of Christmas morning. I have young kids. It's great. They get to open it. They're all very excited. But to me, the actual buildup is better than the actual Christmas day. So I'm going with number 2, Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, it's fine. I tend to do a smoked ham. I might do a lamb. I might do a prime rib, whatever the case may be. Then Rex, I would either do. I think I would do Labor Day. I think I would do Labor Day as my number 4.
Is Labor Day, to clarify, would you consider Labor Day week 0? Like, isn't that kind of week 0 of football season?
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right. Labor Day weekend, you have football coming up. There's something to watch. You can grill out. You can still get all the seafood that you want. You can still do a barbecue theme if you want. I actually love Labor Day. The golf season, for all intents and purposes, is over before we reset before the Ryder Cup. Like I actually love Labor Day. It is an absolute great holiday. And then I would put July 4th number 5, just because I'm an American and I feel like you have to put it inside your top 5. But
thanks for clarifying.
It's not great. What do you like? Burgers and hot dogs? Who cares? You can have it anytime.
Oh,
it's hot.
Right. It's very un-American.
There's fireworks at night. Dog gets scared of fireworks. Kids get scared of fireworks. It's not a great holiday. It's too hot.
I just told you. So it was really hot. Obviously, I live in Central Florida, and it's late June. So it's very, very hot. It was close to 100 yesterday. But I will tell you, I worked in the yard yesterday afternoon, and then they wanted just me and the boys. Bunk was out with some friends. So they wanted the chicken thighs. And so I just went ahead and started cooking on the back porch, and I wanted to do them kind of slow. And then I started watching the Florida LSU. It's the last game of the College World Series.
A lot of runs. A lot of runs scored those last 2 games.
So many runs. I mean, it was almost like 50 runs, I think, were scored the last 2 games, which is amazing. It was very entertaining, though. And I spent the entire afternoon on my back porch, and it was not terrible. I have a pool, so that actually makes things very easy for me. However, it wasn't bad at all. I think you're way off base on July 4th.
I mean, once you're hot, you're already hot. And so if you're going to sit over a grill, like, yeah, you're already hot. You're already flushed. You're, like, what is it? What is it? You're already sweating. What does it matter? It's the point of you're inside in the air conditioning, and then, okay, let's go fire up the grill. And now you're getting it cranked to 550. And it's just like a blast furnace.
Oh, wow.
It's not fun.
All right. I mean, again, I'm spoiled because I have the pool. So if I get overly hot, I can just dive in, and then we have fans on the back porch. I'm not with you on that front, but I get where you're coming from. But isn't Reynolds like in the hills, and you got trees, you got
Lake.
cover? Isn't it supposed to be nice up there? Isn't that the whole point?
It's lake country. It is nice. It's my favorite spot to go in the entire United States. However, it is still going to be 98 degrees with suffocating humidity. It's going to feel like 110 degrees. So think of me, pour one out. It'll be very hot in Savannah as well. I'll be doing burgers. I'll be doing hot dogs. I'm hoping to get a couple of chicken thighs on there because barbecue chicken thighs, as we have established, are delicious. When we do not go to Reynolds for July 4th, I'll probably do some sort of clam bake. I used to do that as a kid. Growing up in Western New York, I do enjoy the clam bake.
All right. Let's go out on the there it is. Go out on a bang.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. Stay tuned next week. We'll be either doing a podcast on Monday or Wednesdays. Still TBD with the production crew, and we're going to be doing that. But we will have a recap of the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Look ahead to the. We'll also get a recap from the policy board meeting if there is any news to come from that, as well as potentially, as Rex hinted at, the PGA Tour schedule for 2024. So there should be plenty to talk about next week. Thank you guys for listening to this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. Wishing you and yours a happy July 4th, even if, like us, you're going to be an incredibly sweaty mess.
It's the best holiday.